Hello, my friends. It's wonderful to see you, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Inspired live stream. I'm John Nolan. It's an honor to be with you. And as everybody's jumping on, welcome on Rumble, welcome on YouTube. I want to say take a few deep breaths wherever you are, however your day has unfolded until now, whether it's morning, evening, or somewhere in between for you. I just want you to arrive in this present moment with us. Give yourself permission to become fully present for however long this takes. We're not going to do this too long, but um, take a few deep breaths. Give yourself the balance, the gift of balance, the gift of presence, and repeat with me. Say it with me. We're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free. We're healthy, wealthy, whole, and free. The circumstances around us cannot change the attitude unless we allow them to. And as a matter of fact, as we have said over and over and over again, we are transitioning into a whole new period. And where we go from here is an interesting question. I believe the path is getting narrow, very narrow. But at the same time, for those who accept this, and what that means, and we'll go into that, the path also broadens because all of a sudden, everything that never really worked but appeared to work doesn't work anymore. And so we have to focus on a few very, very fundamental things that open up whole new worlds. And that's what I want to go into. But let me welcome you first in a live chat. Ray Keller is here. Welcome. Matthew, Goran, uh, Deepa, Pure Water, good to see you. Conspiratary, Carrie, Andreas, Nadine, Little Light Warrior, good to see you. It's been a minute. Christina, UK61, Carol from Canada, wonderful to see you all. So I want to start today with what I did earlier when I set up the live stream. I opened my Tao Te Ching book, and the Tao Te Ching is a classic Chinese text written, probably around 400 BC, although that's, you have different stories about the Tao, and it's attributed to Lao Tzu, and Lao Tzu basically translates to the master. And the Tao is one of those little books that you can read in an afternoon, as Wayne Dyer said famously, and you can study them a lifetime, these verses that are in there. And today I opened up the verse, and randomly I opened the book, and verse 18 came up, and I want to share verse 18 with you because it reflects my morning meditation and my thought process that I've been in for days now. And it perfectly, of course, came up. So I want to share this with you here. And the 18th chapter says, hold on, let me move over here. When the great way is abandoned, and the Tao is roughly translated into the great way, but also the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. So very interesting. When the great way is abandoned, benevolence and righteousness arise. When wisdom and knowledge appear, great pretense arises. When family ties are disturbed, devoted children arise. When people are unsettled, loyal ministers arise. And there are multiple different translations. It's interesting, right? Um, the one I have in front of me sounds just a little different, but it actually equates to the exact same realization. And the realization of this is really that the further you move away from the Tao, the way, you could also say from God, the more you rely on human created structures and rules and laws and a man-made justice. And the further you move away from the Tao and God, the less you comprehend why and what these rules could potentially be rooted in. It so beautifully describes where we are. The flip side of this is that those who have real kindness in their hearts, who feel real love, who feel real connection, do not require these rules because you're not virtuous because of the rules. You're virtuous because that's what your heart is telling you, is showing you. You don't have to remember how to be kind, how to be just, how to be fair, how to be truthful. You just are because of the connection that you have. And I've said this actually in private many times. Only in my lifetime, I've had the following observation, that those who were unjust, unfair, corrupt, and there were many of those, and a lot of this corruption could be considered within the legal realm, but it's definitely immoral and unlawful. And I remember specifically as a kid growing up, I was watching the business world because of my family, and my dad is a businessman, and this world was very open to me. A world where business dealings of with big numbers, and important goods, if you will, and all of this was done on a daily basis. And in that era, I observed that people who were crooked and who were dishonest and corrupt were seemingly living a good life. And perhaps it was a time of slower karma, if you will. Today, my observation shows something else. My observation shows that karma, if you want to call it karma, if you want to call it the circle of life, doesn't really matter. It is almost instantaneous. It just doesn't work anymore. It's only the appearance that it works, but it doesn't. And we are moving closer and closer to a point where this split that we talked about, the split in the timelines, will really be between people that live in the truth and people who don't live in the truth. And I actually want to pull up a few quotes by Lao Tzu, or that are attributed to Lao Tzu, this ancient master who some people believe was actually a group of masters. And it doesn't really matter, as these quotes speak for themselves. And I'm putting them here on a big screen so we can all read them. And the first one is, great acts are made up of small deeds, um, which I absolutely love, because to me, it shows that we do the small mundane things every day that are required of us. And it is like sweeping the floor. It's taking care of ourselves, our hygiene. It's helping a stranger. The smallest things, but they make up a life. They make up meaning. They make up purpose. And people so often believe if they haven't done anything humongous, huge in their lives, that their life doesn't amount to anything. But I look every day around me, the quote unquote ordinary people, you and me, and I see some great masters. Never consider themselves to be masters, but they're wonderful masters because they live life one deed at a time, and they don't do it to show off. They don't do it because someone's watching. They don't do it to get the credit. They just do it because they walk the narrow path of truth and what they know to be right. Never considering consequences, never considering not doing it because it might be inconvenient, or because it might go against the grain when the grain goes in the wrong direction. That to me is so powerful, reminding ourselves of that. The next quote I found is, he who defends with love will be secure. Heaven will save him and protect him with love. And he who defends with love, what does that mean? We're in a time where a lot of people are, rightfully so, worrying, if you will, about the security of their families, of their livelihoods, of their children. And when we, for example, to take it literally, when we defend with love, we don't seek with hatred, offensive violence. We don't go after people with violence because we seek to be hateful and destructive. We only use defense out of love. And oftentimes, it is said that when, for example, an animal attacks a human being in the woods, we would say that that animal was violent. But when that animal protects its cub or its baby, it acts out of love and protection for the baby. That animal is in the good graces of the creator, and same with us. I think if we live and speak and act with love, and that action could very well also means defense, then I think we're doing well. And I've actually listened many months ago. Listened to a segment by Max Egan that made me think for quite a while. Max Egan said, I don't believe if you kill someone in the line of defending your family, I don't think you gather any kind of karma. And I would agree with that. If you the if you defend yourself or your family with love, you're ending the violence that's being brought to you. I don't think it gives you any negative karma. The next slide here says, beautiful. Your own positive future begins in this moment. All you have is right now. Every goal is possible from here, which speaks to the beautiful co-creative powers that we all have, and that we cannot do anything in the future. The only moment that we have is right now. And anything from here moving forward is a potential, is a possibility. We need to remind ourselves of that consistently, because we're also being reminded that any negative future is a constant possibility. Negative and positive, of course, being interpretations. What is dystopia for me is wonderland for someone else, right? From their perspective. There's plenty of people who love the vision of swiping their chip in their hand, being hooked up to AI, and having this wondrous experience of never having to think for themselves again. A horror scenario for me, but a very positive for others. But your own positive future begins in this moment. It begins with your attitude, with your connection, begins with your ability to acknowledge your co-creative powers. I think absolutely beautiful quote. I got two more for you. Do your work, then step back. The only path to serenity. Do your work, then step back. The only path to serenity. Nothing can be forced. Nothing can be forced. And when the work is done, whatever that is, sweeping the floor, whatever it is that was your task, let it be. Every day I have to remind myself of that, as I tend to want to do more and more and more and more and more, even though I already know what needed to be done, was accomplished. How it affects, how it actually plays out is beyond me. That's the Tao. That's the way. That's the great mystery. It's not my job. But the operative word here is do. Do your work. In a spiritual community at large, there has been a infiltration movement over the last decades that led people to inaction. That somehow to think is wrong. That somehow to do is wrong. That action in and of itself is unnecessary. I think that was a very brilliant but very wrong move. We are physical beings. We're having a physical experience. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience, but we're in this experience physical, and deeds are required. But we have to know when to act and when to sit back. Very important. All right. For today, it's my favorite. New beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. New beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. What we talked about, right, for a very long time now. And we tend to think of beginnings and ends as pinpointed experiences that are right now. An end is in the moment and the beginning is in the moment. But these in our reality, these things are very fluent. And a big monumental, century old, millennia old thing is coming to an end. And a new thing, the beginning of a new age, not the new age, but a new age is beginning. It's fluent. Because our lifetimes currently are 70, 80, 90 years long, a decade seems to be significant. It's potentially, 1/10, 1/9, 1/8 of our lives. But a decade in the grand scheme of things is nothing. And this is a painful decade. It's been a painful decade since the beginning of it, but it's also a new beginning. It's this end that is unfolding is simultaneously the new beginning. And wherever our attention is more, is what we experience more of. If we focus more on what is ending and the pain of what is ending, well, then that's what we're gonna see more of. I'm saying let's keep the balance. We learn from this ending what has unfolded. That the longer we have gone through this system, the more it was hidden from us until we crossed that threshold, and now more is being revealed to us. Why? If you want to look at the big scheme of things, what we learn from this and how this is unfolded over the centuries, we do not have to repeat again. We do not have to take this as the foundation of a new beginning. And I think this is the most important thing. I've said this today before in another live stream. This is a time for new conversations with our families and friends that go beyond blame, that go beyond political affiliations, that go beyond finger pointing, and that say, what can we all learn? How many things have we collectively ignored? It was either active participation or it was ignorance. It doesn't matter. Both equally something to look at and learn from. This is our huge educational moment. This decade is our huge educational moment because we see things for what they are. And if we understand how we have let it come this far, we don't have to repeat that shit. We can actually let it go. We can do the work and then sit back and let it go and move into something new. And to me, this is the most important takeaway of today's day and age. The extremists in one direction will completely lose themselves in the tragedy of what is ending, even though what is ending wasn't so good for them to begin with. It was never a good system to begin with. It was always the ones where the common man and women are the backs everything is built on. They're never the ones who have really positively participated in the profits of the system. System wasn't designed that way. But at the same time, there are those who are extremely only invested in this positive future. And that sounds like a wonderful thing. But they have never taken the time and acknowledged what exactly it was that we did wrong or that we allowed to be done to us. And if we don't do it, it is another form of deception that we put ourselves into. And so new beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. I do believe that. If we keep the balance, everything in nature is balance. Everything. I've yet to find anything that functions out of balance for longer periods of times. Everything in nature is also order. However you arrange, however, if you have physical experiments and the particles are being spread out chaotically, they always realign in order and in patterns. Everything in the universe is order and patterns. Everything is symmetry. Everything is balance. If you don't see it with your naked eye, it doesn't mean it's not there. Look at what bees do. Look at a beehive. Nobody can explain how a beehive is geometrically perfect and bees don't do math. Doesn't matter. It's perfect. It's balance. It's beauty. This is where we are um, in this period. It requires all parts of us. Our our spiritual groundedness, but our wonderful intellect, reason and logic paired with spirit and heart and feeling. We're integrating all these parts. And some days that part's a little stronger, and the other day that part's a little stronger. That's okay. We're moving back into balance, slowly but surely. Truth is our constant companion. And I think I might have forgotten this last line here, which is actually just speaking of it. I remember. Let me go and look it up here. There was another quote that I wanted to share with you, and just might have to read it to you. Um, well, I can't seem to find it. The truth, I think it was something that the truth isn't always beautiful, nor are the words that speak the truth always beautiful. I think that's one of the other quotes I didn't put on here. The truth isn't always beautiful. And perhaps this is also something we can allow ourselves finally um, to acknowledge this. The truth isn't always beautiful, but necessary. That the truth needs to be our companion from here on forward forevermore. We can never give ourselves permission again to live relative truth or lies. So all of this is happening now, and I'm glad it's happening, and I'm glad we're finding out who we really are. It's time for that. So let's not be fearful. That's the greatest sin of them all. Because being fearful means you don't trust that there is the Tao, the way, the spirit, God, the creator. And there really is. There's nothing to fear. Let's march on bravely, courageously, and most importantly, with love and truth. Thank you all so much for tuning in, for being here, for a journey where the path is narrow. When the path gets narrow, lots of people jump off. Full responsibility for all we do, say, think. Full responsibility for all we do, say, think. That path's narrow. It's okay. It's okay. And we can encourage each other, inspire each other, and if necessary, sometimes even hold each other accountable. Remind ourselves that ultimately, the person we need to have the deepest and most honest conversation with is the person in the mirror. Love you all so much. Have a blessed rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.